It was a romantic fantasy novel called Beloved by the Tyrant, and this man was Croft, and he is the main male character of this story. At this moment, he was introduced to a girl named Riviera Blanche, and she did not understand what was the point of this beautifully looking body if she was going to be killed anyway. The unlucky Prince of Croft, at the age of 7, he was exiled by the last emperor, which is why he spent 17 years on the eastern border, a lawless world, and the Duke of Blanche helped him regain his throne after the death of the last emperor. After all, the Duke himself wanted to become the father-in-law of the new emperor, and that is why Croft arrived at his estate a week before the coronation to learn etiquette. And because of his training, he accidentally met the Duke's daughter, the Princess Riviera Blanche. But contrary to the Duke's expectations, the crazy tyrant Croft, the first thing he did was to destroy him. He killed many times, and all just to be with the heroine. Just a week ago, she woke up in a novel she had recently read, and comparing her memories with the situation around her, she realized that she had become Riviera Blanche, a victim of tyranny, and Croft, a man who was to become a tyrant before he got to the imperial palace, had come to visit the Duchy of Blanche. Riviera Blanche was the only legitimate daughter of the Blanche family, and she did not understand what sense her status, beauty, and invincible power made if she was going to die soon anyway, and so she was very scared. The man looked at the girl and realized that if he wanted to become an emperor, he had to know the imperial etiquette. But for some reason, they sent a girl who was afraid of him just by looking at him, and after a moment he put his feet on the table and assured them that he had not been warned that he would be given the Duke's daughter as a teacher. The heroine confirmed this, saying that she would do everything in her power, and he looked further and recalled that people had said different things about her, but she was really very elegant, and so he decided to scare her so that she wanted to run away herself. The future emperor agreed, asking to be taught, and his eyes spoke better than any words. They read the words, "If you make a mistake, you will die," and it scared her. She started to talk about the schedule, and the man at the same moment demonstratively started to pose, showing with his whole appearance that he was not interested in it. And the heroine asked herself why it started now. She didn't understand what could be wrong with him. He could certainly kill her right now, but he should have known not to put his feet on the table and to respect the people around him. But he seemed to be completely indifferent, as if he understood that they would die by his hand anyway, so there was no need for extra manners. Croft asked her to teach him. She was afraid of dying all week, and she couldn't figure out if he was a tyrant or just a madman, which meant that if she didn't find a way to change the terrible future, she could only give up. At this moment, the girl kicked the man's legs off the table, thus surprising and frightening the student, who could not have expected this from a lady of the highest aristocracy, and she, in turn, kept a calm expression. When he came to, he asked if he had just been hit, and the heroine assured him that an emperor should not put his feet on the table, after which the man asked in a gloomy tone if she was saying all this because she thought he was not worthy of being an emperor. And the girl, not paying attention, said that if he was not satisfied with her methodology, he could always ask for another teacher. At that moment, she realized the truth. She asked herself what would happen if she disappointed everyone around her, and the emperor wanted to abandon her. Then he would ask for a new teacher and leave the estate, in which case she had a chance to survive. And beaming with joy, she decided to do so. The emperor did not understand what that laugh was, but he replied that it was not, and with a defiant look, he said that he wanted to see her abilities as a teacher of etiquette, and he did not need another teacher at the moment. She had no choice, so she sat down next to him and began to explain. Since they did not have much time left, the Duchess intended to teach only the most necessary manners and rules of etiquette. There were many tasks and little time, so she asked to understand that the course of study could be difficult and strict. The student confirmed this. He could not promise that he would be obedient, but they still needed to have a mutual understanding, after which the heroine, with a smile on her lips, said that if His Majesty understood that the border people called him a complete freak, he should still pull himself together and study hard in order to change people's minds. Hearing this, the emperor grimaced, but a moment later a smile appeared on his face again, and he realized that no matter how smart the princess was, she did not understand anything, and so he would still have to give her a warning. Changing his tone to a threatening one, he turned to the girl, asking if she really did not understand that the value of her life was no different from the value of the life of any other woman in this house. The girl's expression was imperturbable, and she only assured him that such jokes could leave an unpleasant impression, and he had no choice but to confirm that it was a joke and that there was a misunderstanding between them. Keeping her smile on, the heroine asked if there would be any misunderstandings if everyone started thinking of Emperor Leuven as a man who kills left and right, and at that moment, he abruptly rose and stomped right across the table. Taking hold of the girl, he said that they would have to find out in the future whether this was a misunderstanding or the truth, at which point a fist flew into his face and successfully accomplished his task, after which the princess said that he should not touch a woman's body. After all this, the emperor stood there puzzled for a while, and the teacher bowed respectfully, assuring him that this was the end of their welcome lesson and that she had to leave. Outside the door, the girl began to come to her senses, and then she realized that she must have started to go crazy, as she did not understand why she had to beat this stupid dog who was supposed to become a tyrant. She was frightened when he came so close, and then her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She could not imagine that a boxing lesson from her past life could be useful. Later, in her room, the maid asked what was wrong with the girl's hand, to which she assured her that it was just a small bruise, and nothing. And then the servant was frightened, remembering that according to gossip, the emperor was a crazy border dog, and he was supposed to bite the lady, and she herself realized that no matter how beautiful the princess was, she still had a weak body. Later, Croft, in his office, was reviewing documents, and his mind was on the teacher. The more he thought about it, the more absurd it all seemed. As soon as Riviera Blanche, the Duke's daughter, entered the room, he understood all her motives at the same moment. He would have been a complete idiot if he hadn't been able to see between the lines of wanting to arrange their wedding, and now he thought she was just incredibly beautiful. The man had intended to get married anyway, and to be blunt, to avoid etiquette lessons, but remembering what had happened there, he couldn't understand how it had happened at all. A few minutes later, a scream hit his ears. A man entered his office calling himself the captain, and he wanted to know if he really hit Riviera Blanche, and he could not believe that his master had raised his hand to a woman. The man's name was Melik, and the emperor, not wanting to explain all this, asked Blake to tell him everything himself, and the man explained that during that duel, he learned that the captain had attacked the lady. A tired Croft ordered them to shut up, but Melik continued to assure them that he would never believe those gossip, which is why the captain had to repeat personally that he had not touched anyone. The attempted assault on the princess was a serious accusation, and even the emperor could have had problems, especially since it was him who was assassinated, which surprised the men, meaning that the captain had done everything right, and he confirmed this, adding that he was then reproached for touching a woman's body for no reason. His servants were shocked by this, and one of them even started laughing a lot, after which Malik, leaving the room, assured him that the captain had disappointed him, and he immediately began to justify himself, assuring him that it was not like that at all, and it was all a lie. The aide asked what had happened there, and the emperor assured him that it was nothing special, just a small quarrel with the princess. And at that moment the aide stated that a conflict with the Duke would not be to their advantage, and they should apologize to the princess and not aggravate the conflict. In the end, in desperation, the man claimed that she had hit him, adding a second later that she was just scared and that he hadn't done anything wrong. Blake didn't really take his word for it, and so he decided that he should explain. He argued that women should be treated with kindness, and especially when it comes to the princess, it is better to behave differently than usual, to which he received the answer that he had already tried very hard. A little later he was informed that Prince Pasilos was on his way, and it would be better not to talk about it with the Duke until he went to the palace. Prince Pasilos was the younger brother of the last emperor, and also Crofta's uncle, and he wanted the throne for himself, going in the most unscrupulous way. After the death of the emperor, the prince, the first heir apparent, died of an unknown illness, and after that the nobility had to split, taking the side of either Prince Croft or Archduke Pasilos. He would have had a hard time if it hadn't been for the gossip that it was the Grand Duke who had poisoned the prince, and to avoid being branded a murderer, he had to make a sincere confession. but all the witnesses knew that he never abdicated. The prince had never been to the palace before, so he understood that he should be more careful, and Blake said that first he needed to apologize to the princess, explaining that cultural differences were to blame, to which the future emperor repeated for the third time that he had been hit. The assistant assured him that even if this was true, he was not injured, unlike the princess's hand, which definitely had some kind of wound, so he would still have to apologize, and this fact irritated the man. The next time they met, the man was surprisingly silent, and the heroine was afraid to look him in the eye, after which they went to breakfast. And the girl realized that he looked angry, and at this rate she would definitely be finished, and it seemed that she shouldn't have hit him after all. Quite suddenly, she heard a request for forgiveness. The disciple assured her that he was not yet accustomed to their customs, and he hoped that she could understand him, and she began to go through all the options in her head, because she had hit him. After collecting her thoughts, the girl claimed that she did not understand what he was talking about, and therefore he had nothing to apologize for. And these words made him happy, because in this case, it meant that she would not tell the Duke, and so they began to eat. Evaluating his eating habits, the heroine realized that he was surprisingly neat, and there was not a single flaw in his manners at the table, and if she had to complain, it would be only about the amount of food. When he was finished, the princess asked him if he was familiar with the art of dancing, and he gave a hesitant answer that he had never danced before, but he was still familiar with the sword dances performed on the battlefield. The girl realized that the emperor had never danced before, which meant that he would probably make a lot of mistakes, and this made her happy, since she intended to nitpick at everything she could just to get him to finally leave her alone. After that, with a happy expression on her face, the girl said that in this case it was necessary to start as early as possible. That is, today, she said that when the emperor came to the throne, he would have to organize a large number of balls and banquets, and in addition, he would have to organize events and meet foreigners, and if they found out that the emperor could not dance, they would simply laugh at him. The heroine knew that she had to be persistent, but as far as she could tell, Croft had no problem with dancing. After he became emperor, many women who wanted to rise in the social hierarchy would approach him, and even after Riviera Blanche became empress, nobles who wanted to please the emperor would continue to send their daughters there. And Lillian, the main character whom Croft would fall passionately in love with, would be among them. There was an interesting scene in the novel in which the emperor and his beloved danced under the moonlight, and so he definitely needed to learn to dance. At the moment, he saw the teacher talking so enthusiastically about learning in his head, and he had no choice but to agree and learn to dance. And in this case, the girl suggested that he meet her in the big ballroom. The man knew that he didn't really like dancing, but it was unlikely that the princess was ready to give up so easily, and he had no benefit from future quarrels with her. So it was all a deal in which the Duke of Blanche confronted Prince Pasilos, and he gave him this chance in exchange for his daughter's place as empress. The prince suddenly realized that perhaps the position of emperor was not so close, and he did not realize it. But his uncle was still the duke, and at such times outside help was simply necessary, and if he continued to avoid etiquette lessons, the duke might suspect something. He realized that there was only a week left, and whether it was dancing or even arranging flowers, he was ready to do whatever was required of him to adapt to the rhythm of the princess. Leaving the house, on the street he met a friendly Malik. He wanted to apologize for calling him garbage, assuring him that he had misunderstood everything then, and now he should not worry, because the Princess of Riviera Blanche, soon everyone will understand how he felt about her. The captain didn't understand what he was talking about, and Malik assured him that Blake had already told him everything. He had heard that the captain had fallen in love with the princess at first sight, and it was no wonder he was rejected, as he shouldn't have tried to kiss her when they first met, and should have given her some time. Suddenly there was another awkward situation, and everyone misunderstood him, and exhaling heavily, he sent all three of them to the training field, adding a moment later that Malik would be the first. Meanwhile, the teacher was waiting for her student in the ballroom, and she asked the servant to find out where he was and what he was doing, and he told her that Croft was fencing. The heroine could not understand why. If he did not want to come right away, he should not have told her about it, but instead made her wait, and this bothered the girl. Meanwhile, he was training hard, fighting back against Blake, at which point Malik noticed that a princess came out of the house, and the prince realized that he had made a mistake, and his assistant noticed this, asking if he would be beaten again for it. Malik, unable to contain his surprise, asked everyone to look at the girl. Then to everyone's surprise, he went to her to ask her personally, and came closer. She was shocked by how gigantic the man in front of her was. He hesitantly greeted her, introducing himself as Malik, assuring her that he was a subordinate of the captain, and adding that he was not a knight, but just one of his soldiers, and then asked if he could speak to her normally. The girl did not smile sincerely, not knowing what to do in this situation, and the prince noticed that she was very kind to him, and then moved the big man aside and greeted him personally. The girl asked him what he was doing here and now, although it was clear from her words that she wanted to say it much more rudely, and the man understood in his head that he had many options now, to be beaten, and she could arrange anything in front of his subordinates. I thought for a couple of seconds. He suddenly blushed, and just ignored it and went inside, and Malik just asked him in the back why he was leaving so easily, and then asked if he was embarrassed or if he just imagined it. Now the princess was furious, as she did not have time to notice where he went, and in a minute he appeared in her field of vision. The prince realized that if he had already made a mistake, he should accept any punishment. Let it be fists or feet. The aristocrat looked at him angrily, then turned away defiantly, and at that moment, to stop her, he grabbed her arm, and at that moment he remembered her words about not taking a girl without permission. But it was too late, and she was falling from inertia. The man was shocked that she was so easily overthrown, and she was angry, asking how he could treat other people like that. And after a moment he gave her his hand, at which point they met her eyes, and she hit him in the knee, reminding him that she had told him not to touch the girls without their permission. After this blow, the reaction was not what she expected, and instead of his pain, the teacher realized that her own leg began to hurt, and suddenly he came close to her, making her worry about it, and at the same moment, he took the heroine in his arms. The princess began to resent this act, and the student assured her that she could hit him later if she wanted to, but now she should just stay still, and he carried the angry princess to the nearest bench. Gently putting her down, the man took off the girl's shoe, which angered her even more, and she began to order him not to touch her. But it was all in vain. As soon as Croft lightly touched her toe, the heroine howled in pain. The prince said that fortunately, the bone was not broken, and it looked like a normal bruise, and that it was only necessary to apply something cold, and that in the future he should avoid such blows, and if she wanted to harm him in any way, she should scratch him or bite him. These words angered the girl even more, almost as much as she was angered by her powerlessness in this situation. She thought he was just crazy, but it turned out that he was also a pervert. At this point, Croft claimed that he intended to take her into the room, after which he picked her up again, saying that it would be better to sit quietly now, going inside. This sight shocked everyone who saw even the corner of their eyes. The future emperor, whom everyone did not recognize, was carrying their princess, who at the same time tried to pull out pieces of hair from him. Upon entering the room, he immediately ordered the maid to bring very cold water into a basin, after which he began to take off the girl's shoes, and the maid, noticing this, realized that she could not allow this to happen in any way. She suddenly shouted that he could not do this, and even though he would soon be emperor, it did not mean that he could afford to treat their lady like this, and no matter what the duke said, she was ready to give her life to protect her lady. The man understood that he had been told not to touch her too gently, but he could not expect such a reaction, and he demonstratively withdrew his hands and asked her to take off her socks before using the walking water. When the maid left the room, she immediately asked in tears what had happened, and was told that the lady had just injured her finger and that she should have brought cold water. The heroine realized that she could not simply say that she had kicked the future emperor, and simply assured the top that it had happened. Later, while soaking her feet in water, she realized that she was very weak if she had already dislocated her finger by easily digging it, and Croft was not her only problem now, but she had to find a way to survive in this world. Later in the evening, there was a knock on her room, and to her surprise, the future emperor came inside, sat down next to her, and asked if her leg was already better. to which the heroine assured him that everything would be fine, although recovery could take some time, and now teaching dancing might not be so easy. The prince said that learning to dance was not really important to him, and the heroine, as if not listening, assured him that teaching him etiquette was becoming a problem, and that he should think about another teacher, to which he said that he thought it was time to talk about it. In all seriousness, he asked the princess if she really didn't want to teach him how to dance. The heroine didn't understand why he asked her such a sudden question, and then, exhaling heavily, she explained that her father had appointed her as a teacher just so they could have a relationship. To her surprise, the man briefly replied that he knew this very well himself, and then added that he would gladly accept her as empress. So if she did not want to be his teacher, she should have just said so, and even if she did not, they would still have a wedding. So even if she was not sure about him, the man offered to hold the engagement ceremony after he ascended the throne. This revelation shocked the girl, and she began to wonder why they should play the wedding, because in the original he was not a faithful man. In the Croft book, he chose Riviera Blanche, his empress. But still, even after the wedding, their relationship remained cold, and Croft simply got rid of her, right after meeting Lillian. And so now she thought that he would be against this wedding. Of course, he had no reason to refuse the wedding now, especially since he was unlikely to find the love of his life so quickly. And in this situation, refusing to learn etiquette would not have helped her. The heroine assured him that she could teach the prince any manners he wanted, and what she didn't want was… At this point, she was interrupted by a student who added that she didn't want to get married, and now he was curious about the reason, which was absurdly simple. She just didn't want to die because of him. But she couldn't just tell him that. The man decided that she must have already liked someone else, and then proposed a compromise. She would be his etiquette teacher until he came to the throne and took control of the imperial palace with the help of the duke. And after that, it would not matter who her father was or what he was capable of. The heroine realized that the person in front of her was only pretending to treat her as an empress in order to gain the duke's trust, and that he would get rid of him at the same moment he became emperor, which was the meaning of what he said to her, and it was a good start to becoming a tyrant. The princess smiled slightly, then asked if he could then send her wherever he wanted, to which he readily confirmed, and then the bride enthusiastically assured him that it was an honor to teach him etiquette. The future emperor assured her that he did not really want it, but he was ready to be patient, and the heroine, while styling her hair, realized that she had finally done what she had wanted so much. The man, a little embarrassed, stood up and assured her that he had to go, then took her hands, said that until the swelling went away, it would be better not to strain her leg, and a moment later he picked her up, which made her remind him that he shouldn't touch the girl. But he confirmed that he remembered everything and that he needed to ask for permission. Being once again in someone's arms, the heroine realized that she should do something with her body so that she could escape in case of danger, and therefore she needed to be as independent as possible. The prince carried the girl into the hall where the heroine's father, the Duke of Blanche, was waiting for them. He slyly looked at the man carrying his daughter, and realizing that everything was going according to plan, asked how the etiquette lessons were going. It looked like the two of them had become close. Without making any appearance, Croft coldly assured that the lessons were going well and he had already learned a lot. The heroine thought that he had already lost his mind, to which the prince himself looked at her with a look that said that everything was under control. Sitting down at the dinner table, the father assured him that his daughter might be young, but she could already provide His Majesty with worthy assistance, to which he confirmed this, adding that he himself had never doubted it. After a few minutes, the future emperor asked what news there was about his rival, Prince Pasilos, to which the duke said that he had mentioned Prince Azin as expected. Prince Azin, the only surviving prince besides Croft, will die at the hands of his brother in the future, and because of this, he will be nicknamed a tyrant. And as a result, Prince Pasilos, who led Azin to his death, will bring Lillian, his niece, directly into the hands of Croft. The girl loved such stories, where the protagonist falls head over heels in love with his past enemy. But in a moment she realized that if the protagonist hadn't killed so many people on the way, maybe he would have succeeded. My father assured me that Duke Pasilos would definitely want Croft to confront his brother, and once he came to the throne, He would have to deal with this situation as soon as possible to avoid any further problems. The girl realized that everything was going to happen in a way that would repeat the events just like in the novel. And even though she had made a deal, if this crazy dog in the role of the emperor broke the chain, what would be the point of it? And as a result, Duke Blanche would be destroyed. At that moment, she realized that perhaps to stop those events, it would be worth preventing the man from falling in love with Lillian. And it looked like a perfect backup plan, his eyes betraying a little rage. But that was his charm, and every time she looked at him, he seemed unassailable. While reading the story, the heroine spent most of her time screaming for Lillian to run away from him. But as she became one of the secondary characters in the story, she realized why that girl loved him so much. Sometimes the idea that cruel and serious men are a great choice just washed away common sense. The girl never finished the book, but if it was a romantic novel, then there must have been a good ending. And if everything is done right, then everyone will definitely have a good ending. Just like in the original, it would be necessary to make sure that Lillian didn't get scared, so that Croft wouldn't go crazy missing her when she ran away. And if they were together right away, so much bloodshed could be avoided. And so now she wondered if she could still change the course of history. At that moment, she met the prince's eyes and enthusiastically showed that she would help him change. And as soon as he left it to her, he made a very angry and cunning expression, so much so that the heroine felt disgusted and turned away from him. When she finished, the princess explained that after a meal with a girl he liked, he should invite her for a walk or tea. That was the etiquette. And the heroine looked at him and could not understand how Lillian could get together with him. In the end, having restrained her emotions, the heroine assured that it was the proper thing to do according to etiquette. And the prince agreed, adding that the lady's leg hurt, so a walk would not be suitable now, and so he offered her a ride together. The teacher assured him that she could walk, and that he shouldn't feel sorry for her to carry her around, to which he assured her that he didn't care, since she wasn't heavy, but that wasn't the problem at all. Holding hands, the prince helped the heroine up, and he could not understand what this girl was like. She was very strange, and even stubborn. He understood that she did not like to accept help, and so he wondered if it was also a cultural feature. The man really thought that everything would go away on its own. But unlike this Riviera Blanche, as soon as he let go of her hand, she immediately fell to the floor and then hurt her finger by kicking it. She had a very unusual body, and if she continues to walk with a dislocation, at this rate she may get a fracture. Now, realizing the consequences, Croft decided that the best solution in this situation would be to pick her up, to which she once again reminded him not to touch her so suddenly, and realized why Lillian was so scared of him. In this case, the girl decided that she could now hit him on the forehead with her head, but he ran away from the blow at the last moment, after which he added that her forehead could break and she should be more careful. This answer shocked the aristocrat somewhat. The man bent down and added that if she was angry she should pull his hair, and she immediately listened to him. When she finished, she ordered him to repeat after her, and then she said, "Madam, could you please forgive me?" And the man obediently repeated after her, and so she assured him that he should always say it first, regardless of the situation. The heroine said that when her leg healed, he would no longer have to worry about it, as it was a very small sprain, so she thought it would heal in 3 days. But her husband had a different opinion. He thought it would take at least 3 months. The princess asked him not to mock her, as the sprain could not have taken so long to heal, but he seemed to be serious, and if he had not been so sure, he would not have said so, because the prince judged from his own experience. This surprised the girl a bit, but she didn't wait for an explanation, and after walking a little further, the future emperor realized that it was time to have fun. And so he said that it was incredible that a girl with such a body was still alive, and to his surprise, she confirmed it, even though it was not normal. They came to the balcony, where they sat down at a table, and the heroine began to admire the night sky, and the prince, sitting nearby, said that she had a straight posture, and she moved quite quickly, so if she strengthened her body and learned a few tricks, she would become much better. A moment later he added that in an attack, not only strength itself is important, but also the ability to distribute it correctly, at which point the future emperor took a spoon and continued to explain that one should always try to hit the enemy's vulnerable points to inflict good damage, and if you just attack with all your might, you will only harm yourself, and the skills of distributing force will come with strengthening your muscles. This statement surprised the heroine, but the man continued, citing as an example what she had tried to do not so long ago. It was not easy to take a person by surprise when in such a position, and therefore she could easily hurt her neck. The heroine didn't understand why he suddenly started teaching her, but there was no stopping him. The man said that if her bones were so easily damaged by a strong blow, then perhaps he should have hit her with a lodestone, for example, slapped her. The girl claimed that the slap would not hurt, and the prince asked if it would be worse than hurting himself, and so the heroine assured him that he just needed to stop doing things that deserved such a punishment, and that could solve this problem. The future ruler assured me that he would be happy to stop doing this, but I had to remember that he was still learning, especially since her blows were not painful for him at all. It was more like a butterfly flying and landing. The teacher looked at him with disgust and said that in order to be like him, she would have to become much stronger, after which the man suddenly said that he could teach her, and while she was teaching him etiquette, he would teach her the art of fighting. This proposal confused the heroine, and she assured him that there was no need for this, but he did not think so. He offered her to learn how to hit properly, but the girl was not interested, and therefore said that it would be better to do everything herself. The girl didn't want to train, she was just going to do some exercises, although with her body like that, even that would not be easy, and if she suddenly wanted to run away, her father would be very angry. In the novel, he was described as a god of fencing. At the moment, the heroine was not sure about this, but it seemed as if he was an expert in the ability to wield a sword, especially since it would remove all suspicions that she was planning something with Croft. So she wished him luck in this matter, and he in turn wished her the same. The prince she thought was a terrible tyrant was actually not so bad. Following her lessons, after breakfast, he understood how to invite her to tea, which was why education was so important after all. At this point, the man drank all the tea almost at once, which is why the teacher had to explain that the main feature of tea is its deep flavor, so it is better to drink it slowly, savoring it, to which the student assured that it was too bitter and tasteless, so he did not understand how it was possible to drink it at all. The heroine decided to check his speculations and tried to drink this tea herself, and after that she immediately became disgusted and realized that the maid had deliberately prepared such a disgusting tea. But she still tried not to make a show of it, and so she asked for tea leaves and dishes for her, explaining that black tea is usually used for tea parties. Afterwards, the aristocrat quickly and elegantly prepared everything, after which she offered to try the new tea, and after tasting it, he confirmed that it was very tasty. While drinking this tea, the prince realized that he also had to do something, so he got up and handed her a sword and asked if she wanted to try to practice with it, which confused the girl a bit. The warrior assured her that training with a sword is the best way to strengthen the upper body, and if she immediately starts swinging the sword in different directions, she is likely to break her arm, so she should be careful. The heroine was outraged by this lack of trust, and taking the sword assured that she would not break anything by simply waving it. Supporting her, the prince said that you need to keep your hand and sword in a straight position, slowly raise and lower it, and then lightly touch the tip of the sword to the ground, and then raise it to the sky. The girl tried to repeat what had just been explained to her, but suddenly the sword fell heavily to the ground, but this did not upset the prince, and he supported the newcomer, offering to try again. He began to explain in more detail that she should start lifting from ground level, and the slower she did it, the better her muscles would develop. All the while he supported the sword, and as soon as he let go, the sword fell with a thud to the ground, making the girl blush with shame. The man did not expect his student to be so weak, so he asked if she was using all her strength, explaining that if she strained her abdomen, it would be easier to use her strength. The shamed heroine assured him that she had done her best, and then asked what kind of sword it was and why it was so heavy, and the owner of the sword confirmed that it was indeed a little heavier than usual, but added after a moment that it was not so heavy that it could not be lifted at all. The offended girl returned to her tea, and the prince, mocking a little, assured her that he would prepare a wooden sword for her, and at that moment the maid, who was nearby and saw everything, could not understand why, if he liked this tea, he took out a sword in front of the lady, and this irritated the maid very much. The next day, at the end of another etiquette lesson, the student said that his co-worker would be arriving that day, and he was a little worried, but he assured him that he shouldn't worry about it, and he just needed to tell the maids not to go near the annex. The interested princess asked him if he meant that his friend had such a bad temper that he could hurt people, to which he said that his temper was not so bad, but that she could easily annoy the servants. The heroine didn't like the idea of a person who could cause discomfort to their servants, and after a moment she asked if the prince had said she, and he confirmed it. It was not a man. It could be said that she left only scorched earth. This description frightened the princess, and so she asked who she was, to which the future emperor said that this girl was the Red Bird Kenzal, a famous magician of the East, and this shocked the girl, as she had no idea who she was, and she was not mentioned in the part of the novel that she had read. Meanwhile, in the prince's office, his entourage was sitting on the ground, obviously depressed about something, and in a moment, Blake got to his feet and started accusing Malik of being all his fault, and he woke her up and then invited her here, since she had been sleeping peacefully for a year, and he didn't understand why she was there. Meanwhile, a giant magic circle appeared near the estate, and a woman who was known by various names, such as the Witch of the East, the Evil Kinsel, and the Black Catastrophe, came out of it. Upon entering, Croft was the first to greet her, and she greeted him with a sweet smile, calling him the boss, and assuring him that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. And her greeting was followed by a warning that she shouldn't even think about causing any problems here. Frivolously, the woman assured that she had never caused any problems, to which the captain said that first of all it was worth discussing whether she should be here at all. But the guest assured that she would not want to spend the night in such a place anyway. He led the woman straight to the princess's room, after which he introduced them, and the guest bowed lightly and assured her that it was a great honor to meet Miss Blanche. And after a moment of closer inspection, she simply beamed with happiness, saying that Malik had not lied. The captain introduced her as the woman who would marry him in the future and become the empress, and this statement shocked both girls, and the guest said that it was too much, and that such beauty should be enjoyed together, and he was only going to appropriate it for himself. The girl lost touch with the witch's words, and stopped understanding what she was talking about, and the man who took her said that he had decided to marry her, and the witch assured her that she didn't mind anyway. She had just come anyway. The heroine finally stopped understanding what the conversation was about. Their conversation was like a chaotic exchange of words, and she began to feel out of place in this room. And meanwhile, the student asked how soon she would leave this place, to which she replied that she would never leave, and she liked it here. The guest was quite fascinated by the Duchess's beauty, and the prince realized that at least she would get tired quickly, and therefore there would be no problems, after which he dragged the woman out of the room, although the heroine did not understand why, as she thought they would have something else to talk about. A few minutes later, the man returned and assured me that there was nothing to talk about, and he saw the girl wanting to kill him, to which she said that she would decide it all by the situation, namely, the fact that he made a promise one day and immediately broke it. The future emperor claimed that it was just a misunderstanding, but it was too late, and he was given the opportunity to clear up all misunderstandings by explaining clearly. And at that moment, he found himself in a difficult situation, as he did not know what to say. Being Kinsel's love interest meant practically the same as being a walking sacrifice, and this was not the best development. It was difficult to explain in detail, and so he said directly that it seemed Kinsel had fallen in love with her. But since he said he was going to marry her, the woman should back off. A grimace of disgust contorted the Duchess's face, and then she asked if he liked it, thinking that after all the beatings he had received from her, he might have secret feelings. But after a moment, she came to her senses, assuring herself that whatever Croft thought, she wished to give her place to Lillian and get away from here as soon as possible, and so she expressed hope that His Majesty would keep his promise. The prince's subordinates were waiting outside, and Malik noticed his friend, greeted her cheerfully, and asked if she had already met the princess, to which he received only a cold reply that he was too noisy, and during this time he had not yet learned to be quiet, and so she threatened to tear out his tongue, The guy calmed down a bit, and then repeated the question whether she had met the princess and whether she was really beautiful, to which the woman assured him that she had only said hello, and in a moment, a blissful smile appeared on her face, and the woman said that she would wipe the whole empire off the face of the earth if she shed a single drop of tears from her eyes. At that moment, another guy was waiting for her at the entrance, and the woman immediately threatened him to get out of her way if he didn't want to spoil her mood. But unlike the others, this guy was not afraid, but only asked if she wanted to sleep some more. The sorceress threatened him to get behind her, or she would send him back to the east, and at that moment, a magic circle appeared under his feet. But he was not impressed with it either, and said that he did not think it would be able to send him back to the eastern castle. The woman went inside, and the boys followed her. Blake, frightened, asked if she was really going to stay here, and said that if she wanted to, he was ready to take her directly to the imperial palace. But he was assured that he didn't need to go anywhere, because both the boss and Princess Riviere, who would soon become empress, were here. And this information surprised Blake. He had heard about it for the first time, and so he asked if the princess herself had told him so. The woman suddenly turned around and claimed that the captain had told her all this, that he would marry her and make her his empress. And these words calmed the guy down, because it meant that they had reconciled. Hearing this word, the woman realized that the captain could have treated the princess badly, and at that moment, she was seized with cold anger. Blake saw this and began to make excuses in horror, assuring that it was just gossip. And the captain said that it was the princess who hit him, and if he said it, it meant that it was true. These words calmed the witch down, and she warned him that he should have told her from the very beginning, because he almost made her kill the captain, and she apologized, and then she went to her room because she said she was tired. The guy asked how much sleep he would get this time, and the woman said that she had been woken up and forced to use magic, and that was why she was tired. After which the sorceress ordered Malik to be locked up somewhere far away, for 3 days at least, otherwise she would definitely kill him this time. When she finished, the woman slammed the door loudly behind her, and Blake was left alone, hoping that everything would be fine and that she wouldn't cause any big problems. Later, the Duchess was hosting other aristocrats at the table, and they asked her what kind of person the future emperor was, and whether he was as terrible as the gossip said, because they said that people from the East were extremely cruel. The heroine realized that it was Archduke Pasilos who was spreading such gossip, and so she had to refute it all while people were talking about it. She could not allow Croft's reputation to be tarnished, as only then could it survive. But now she wasn't sure what she needed to say. But after a moment, the Duchess said that she didn't understand these gossips, because the man was very calm and very careful, and also incredibly strong. Perhaps he was not well acquainted with their etiquette at the moment, but that was only temporary. But he was very attentive and kind. This story surprised the ladies present, and one of them suggested that it was a pleasure to teach such a fine man, so it seemed that the girls were delighted with him. At the end of the story, the heroine thanked everyone for coming, and suddenly the prince appeared in front of them, so the girl bowed to him, asking if he was going to train, and introduced her friends to him. His appearance seduced all the girls, and they shone with the desire to get to know him better, and the heroine hoped that everything would be fine, because she had prepared everything for him, and he, in turn, looking at the Duchess, realized that judging by her look, he would be beaten again if he did something wrong, and right here and now, she demanded that he demonstrate excellent manners. The future emperor apologized to the princess for his impudence, and then took her in his arms, assuring her that her leg had not yet recovered, and therefore he wanted to carry her away, which shocked all the girls. Later, he came to her room, bringing a wooden sword with him, and offered to try it out. Picking it up, the heroine realized that it was not very heavy, and then said that if she pointed it in the direction of the prince, she would commit treason, and therefore asked him to take it away. The man didn't understand the relevance of this to training, and was asked that there was no point in training if she wasn't going to fight, and what she could do with such a body. But he still wanted to teach her to fight. The princess just wanted to be able to train as soon as her leg was healthy, and that was not what she needed right now. But suddenly the teacher's face came closer to her, and she began to evaluate it and ask why and what he was trying to do. Maybe he wanted to be hit in the head, or maybe he just wanted to be kissed. But she didn't want either. So she decided to hit him with her fist, but the man saw the blow and dodged it, saying that she didn't need to be agile at all, and that he thought it was better to just build up his strength and endurance. But a moment later, she grabbed him by the hair, and Prince began to apologize, assuring her that she needed to calm down, and he only wanted to check her reaction and not kiss her in any way, to which he received the answer that not all situations can be solved by apologizing. When he was done, the disheveled man apologized again, as he just thought it would be a good test of her reaction, to which the heroine defiantly turned away, saying that what he did was a very bad thing. After a moment, he remarked that pulling out her hair could also be considered treason, and this worried the girl. And so, in her defense, she said that given the way he treated her, she did not consider it a crime. After these words, the emperor smiled, saying that at first he thought the princess was much crueler than she looked, but now he realized that she had a sweet side, to which she only looked at him with disgust. The prince said that it would be very difficult to train with the injured leg, and since Kinsel was here, he should ask for her help, and they would start training later. And hearing this, the girl seemed to have an epiphany. The heroine said that since they already had a new guest, she would like to arrange a dinner for his subordinates. Given that they would be meeting in the future, it seemed to her that getting to know each other better over dinner would be a good idea. The future emperor, thinking about it, said that they would meet in 3 days, and then they should think about it. And this surprised the heroine, as she did not understand how one could sleep for 3 days in a row, to which she was told that a woman could sleep easily for 3 months. But by that time her leg would be healthy, but for now, they had a lot of work to do. Later, they set to work, and the princess's help in reading the difficult documents sent by the Duke of Blanche was especially pleasant for him, and she also explained much better than it was written. She had a beautiful voice, a pleasant pronunciation, and a calm tone that calmed the mind. Even stories about violent conflicts were no longer so incomprehensible if she told them. If she was an ordinary beauty, it was not the same. So, the time came, the girl suddenly took out a book, and the prince asked if the history of 300 years ago could be so interesting, to which the heroine said that the events of the future were just a reflection of the past, and there was nothing wrong with knowing a little history. The man refuted her claims, adding that she had very naive conclusions, since history was written by liars who lied as much as they could, and all on their own whims. The emperor was always described as incredible in history books, and nothing will ever be written about his dirty personal life. He overthrew the empress, he killed her, and sent their little child to the eastern border, to certain death. So why were emperors glorified as saints in the books? And if you look at it from this side, the heroine even felt sorry for Croft, and she assured him that not everyone believed in this lie, and these words reassured him. Later, a man asked for an audience with the girl, and he claimed that this was a challenge to their entire duchy. He could not let the dishonorable death of his handmaiden go by, and so he wanted to challenge the mad witch to a duel, so he begged for the right to do so. The aristocrat assured him that she understood his feelings perfectly well, but that the woman was still a subordinate of His Majesty, and therefore they should not make rash actions, at least until they knew what really happened. These words only made the man angry, and he said that this crazy woman had gotten into the bedroom and killed him, so he couldn't even defend himself. He just didn't have a weapon, and they knew absolutely everything they needed to. These screams gave the princess a headache. It was about Kinsel, of course. It happened 3 days after she arrived here. At first, everything was quiet, and now she didn't know why this woman did it. And when they found out what happened, the woman was already gone, and only the corpse of the servant remained. In the end, the Duchess said that they still had to wait, and she had no intention of going into conflict with the Emperor, and if he was ready to do something rash, then let him be ready to remove their family's coat of arms from the armor. The man kept saying in despair that his subordinate had been killed, to which the girl assured him that she understood everything and did not ask him to forget about it, but only asked for a little time. After finishing, the prince appeared in the room, and he said that if the man wanted to fight his subordinate, he had no objection, and even more, he was ready to go out to fight on her behalf. To which he was asked if he intended to kill the commander of the guard. She did not even allow that the man could lose, because if it were possible, the commander would have been strangled by her father. At this point, the girl was interested in where Kinsel was now, and whether she had really escaped, to which the commander assured her that she was too crazy to simply run away in fear of punishment. A few minutes later, he brought her to one of the rooms where the wizard was sitting quietly, and the first thing she did was to ask what was wrong with the princess's leg, to which she replied that she had simply dislocated her toe, and in this case, the woman immediately used magic to heal it, saying that she hoped that after that, they would become a little closer to each other. In a moment, a magic circle appeared under her foot, and in a few seconds her finger stopped hurting, after which the heroine sat down on the sofa next to her and started talking, and it was she who was interested in why the woman had killed the man in the manor. There was silence, and after a minute, twisting her hair in her hand, the woman lightly assured him that she had done everything in her power, that if he had done something to her, he would still be able to walk on his own 2 feet. And yet, although she was talking to the princess now, the sorceress could not tell the whole truth now, as the bird would not want her to tell everything. This answer confused everyone present, and the prince did not think that killing one of the local guards would be bad for them. He could even say that it would be to their advantage. After gathering her thoughts, the girl said that in the end, she had the right to know why one of their family's defenders was killed, and if his death was unjust, she would have to punish the perpetrator, whoever he was. This answer interested the killer, and she asked if the guy was someone important and why she was so worried about it, to which the heroine assured that she did not know him personally, but he had served her family for a long time. Without letting her finish, the woman smiled cheerfully and said that since the princess was responsible for such things, in the future she would definitely ask her permission to kill the Duke of Blanche, adding that she could gladly accept a duel from the captain of the guard, to which she immediately received a firm no. A moment later, the princess was called outside the door, and she allowed them to come in. The maids came and apologized, assuring them that someone wanted to talk to her, and at that moment, a girl appeared behind them, also dressed as a maid. I went inside. The girl was a maid. She was scared and did not say anything, so the Duchess had to ask what was going on, and when I came closer, the sorceress assured me that she did not have to talk about it, and so to break the silence, the lady asked her name. The maid introduced herself as Barry, after which the girl asked her to calm down and calmly tell her everything she wanted, and in a moment, through tears, she said that the witch really only wanted to save her. The story she was told seemed ordinary. It was the rare case when a knight was killed for trying to defile a servant, so the princess ordered her personal maid to teach her everything she needed to know, since this girl was now also her, and then she told her to tell the commander to report to her office. Inside, the man noticed the sorceress and was immediately seized with anger, but he was stopped by the Duchess, who informed him that as soon as he drew his sword, he would be expelled from the order of knights of this duchy at that very moment, and the deceased would also be posthumously deprived of the title of knight. The man demanded an answer to what it all meant. Not only did he die a dishonorable death, but they also wanted to posthumously deprive him of his title, and this could not be allowed. The witch was ready to burn him at that very moment, but the prince stopped him in time. Because of this, the aristocrat threatened him that if he continued to defend the man who had defiled the name of Duke Blanche, the necessary measures would be taken against him as well. And these words made the man calm down, so he simply asked what his subordinate could have done, and whatever he had done was not a mortal sin. The lady briefly replied that it was none of his business, and these words angered the guard, so he assured her that it was also none of this witch's business, after which he also stated that he, as a leader, was obliged to avenge his unjust death, and so he challenged the witch to a duel, to which she readily agreed. At that moment, the prince's voice was heard, and he declared that he would fight himself, as he realized that Kinsel had already killed one of the duke's knights, and now she was going to kill the commander, and now that the duchy needed protection, he could not let her kill him. The woman asked him why the right to fight had been taken away from her, and he immediately assured her that she would repay the debt in the future, but for now, he planned to do so. The heroine realized that this could not be allowed, because in this case, it would be gossiped that he was challenged to a duel by a subordinate of the family in which he was supported, and so she made a crazy statement, claiming that in this case, the commander of the guard also had the right to be replaced, and being a duchess, it would be her who would fight him in this duel. Such a statement took away the gift of the thing from all those present, and the commander, searching for words, asked how to understand it all. To which he received a cold answer that the Order of the Knights of Blench was under the jurisdiction of the duchy, and therefore she was in charge, and in any case, it was necessary to make sure that in the future, the knights would not talk about it, and the duel would take place tomorrow, and with that, she ordered her subordinate to leave. He still stood there, searching for words, and then she repeated her order in a sterner tone, the shocked prince, meanwhile, sending back the sorceress, who could not help but laugh, but still listened. Left alone, the future emperor needed an answer, to which she asked if he was not going to kill her, claiming that she was serious, as she would not have the courage to joke with her life like that, after which the man, becoming more serious, assured that he did not intend to do so, and the heroine was of the same opinion. She also did not intend to kill anyone, so everything was fine. The next day, the duelists were already standing on the field, preparing for the battle. The prince was looking at her, and could not guess what was in her head. Blake was terrified at that moment, completely seriously declaring that he must not harm the princess in any way. He asked her to just swing the sword a few times and end the duel, to which the man nervously said that if he tried to knock the sword out of her hands, he could break her arm, and so he ordered wooden swords to be brought. The heroine indignantly asked what it was, and she was definitely not going to fight with a wooden sword, and the opponent asked if she really wanted to use a real sword, to which she confidently said that it would be a duel, and the man, smiling nervously, ordered to bring a lighter rapier. In a minute, the opponents were already standing opposite each other, and the judge was the commander of the guard. Before the battle, he said that in this duel, the winner would receive all the rights to truth and honor, and the loser would have to fulfill the winner's demands, and when both agreed, the battle began. The man, pointing his sword, invited the girl to raise her sword, and she did so, after which she was satisfied with her result, after which the prince touched his sword to hers, claiming that he had asked to be raised. The shocked heroine realized that the opponent was just pressing on him, which is why she couldn't do anything, and so she angrily began to swing him in different directions, while the smug prince was just defending himself from the senseless attacks. And a few seconds later, suddenly the princess noticed that the sword had flown out of her hands, and she turned her gaze to her opponent, who was already holding her rapier in his chest. And at that moment, absolutely everyone present was shocked. Realizing what she had done, the girl let go of the weapon, and the man raised his hands and declared that he had lost, and the good-natured princess would not spare his life. There was silence, and the prince, not knowing what he was waiting for, ordered the duel to end, and the judge was outraged by this duel, to which the emperor changed his tone and assured him that if he was not satisfied with this, he could take his weapon and he would allow him to enter this fight. And after this threat, the man had no choice but to officially end this duel. At the same moment, Kinsel approached the depressed princess, asking how she was doing, to which the girl sadly presented that she had injured him. But the woman assured her that it was still fine, and that such a wound only needed to be wrapped and treated. There was nothing that could be done. When she finished, the princess went to find out how her wounded rival was feeling, to which he only repeated the words of the sorceress, adding that he was fine, but that the wound still did not give her peace, and so she took his hand and led him to treatment. The prince's subordinates looked only at them, saying among themselves that the princess was much more determined than she seemed at first glance, and so it was not surprising that she stole the captain's heart, and it was interesting to see what would happen next, as it was a very unexpected development. Having brought the man inside, the situation began to escalate in the heroine's head. She did not know what to do if the usual treatment did not help. She began to play out the worst-case scenarios in her head, that she might need stitches, the wound might get worse, he might die of infection or something else, and then she would be hanged for treason. Through her thoughts, she heard the emperor's voice. And when she came back to herself, the man noticed that she was taking off his clothes right now, and when she realized this, she blushed terribly, and at the same time apologized. Still ashamed, the girl noticed that he still needed treatment, as he was bleeding, and in this case the man assured her that he would undress himself, and in a minute she applied a cloth to the wound, which was dipped in medicine, and when she was done, it did not look like the wound was serious. The princess said that she would not have had to worry if she had known how strong his body was, and examining the man, she saw many scars, and this made her realize that this man had survived countless attacks, and despite this, he still became emperor, survived such wounds. She wondered how much he wanted to live. Her thoughts were again torn from her by his voice, where he shyly claimed that she was currently groping him, and the girl, realizing this, quietly apologized, to which he still shyly agreed to forgive. Now he could understand why she used to tell him all the time that he had to ask for forgiveness before touching her. And to his surprise, the Duchess had no emotions about it. She was incredibly sad. And at that moment, he decided to kiss her. After finishing this unexpected event, they looked at each other for a while, and after a moment, the prince bowed to the heroine, assuring her that he felt he had to do it, and it was not a mistake, as she had started it first, adding that she should listen to him. She was the first person who looked at his scars like that, and that's why he kissed him. The heroine now felt only an uncontrollable urge to hit him. Everything would have been fine if she didn't have that look in her eyes. The girl didn't feel anything special for Croft. She just felt sorry for him, and that was it. Exhaling heavily, the Duchess assured him that it was time for him to think about the problems in his personal life, to which he said that his life had been one problem from the very beginning, and even his father wanted to kill him. But that was not the point now. After a moment, he asked if kissing was forbidden in society, to which the princess continued to explain that it was not that, and he should not kiss anyone without permission. And then the emperor concluded that there would be no problem if she gave him her permission. And that was the end of the thread of reason, and a blow was felt. In a moment, the man was already bent over, holding his stomach, and the girl next to him said that her skills might have improved, but she was the type of person who learned by doing, and probably should have hit him in the face, at which point, the wounded prince assured her that in that case, she would have broken several fingers. The teacher did not listen to him, and continued her lecture, explaining that he would never be able to win the heart of a woman with such actions, and they would rather hate him and try to run away. The prince admitted his guilt and sharply apologized, to which the heroine assured him that everything was fine, but he shouldn't do it again, after which the embarrassed man asked what she was going to ask as a winner, because she had won the duel, shown generosity and spared his life, and now she had the right to demand anything. The heroine was surprised that he still accepted his defeat, but now it did not matter what she thought about it, and the man asked her to say everything she wanted, and after thinking for a moment, with a serious face, the girl said that she wanted to be thrown out of the imperial palace in the future,